It's been a long time. Some of y'all, specifically those of you who were called Nem, are gonna remember my old game from ages past. Tragically, this is not there. The save's on my old computer, and I could get it, but, old Deoxyne's been updating away for the last couple of years, and frankly, I don't even know how it'd work anymore. Actually, Deoxyne's been making this mod for basically as long as I can remember, and I've been checking in with it, periodically, the whole time. I'm sure I'll have little stories to tell you from there, not that I've ever finished a game. It is far, far too long. Deoxyne is a weird dude, and Piratez is a weird mod. On the one hand, this mod pushed the engine to its absolute limit and beyond, spilling out from OpenXcom into OpenXcom Extended, where new pulleys and levers were periodically added behind the scenes by Deoxyne for this mod. Say what you will about the lad, but he knows his XCOM. Even aside from the effort that went into the complicated mission structures and ridiculously expensive research tree, some of the best turn-based tactical combat you can ever experience is right here. Right past this horribly cursed splash screen. On the other hand, it's some gross anime bullshit with no censorship, as the lady in the bottom left says. For some reason, this is a weirdly horny mod for a 1994 strategy game for uncles, with pixels the size of dinner plates. Just about every one of these microscopic pixel truppet has their tits out. And all the lore and world building minutiae around that is as gross and weird as possible, all of the time. My YouTube channel has a strike on it, and it's because of these very piratical pixel nipples. So, for the purposes of what we're doing here, there will be some censorship. Some would tell you to just play the XCOM Files mod, or the big Warhammer one, or the kids are yammering on about instead. Personally, I think Files is really, really boring. And cover your ears, Nem, just for a second. I don't really like Warhammer. I just paint a man. It's fine. I think we've looked at this for long enough. Clicking the mouse would give you some background story, but I'll fill you in as we go. This is going to be a new game. I always pick the middle difficulty, like every time, just on XCOM in general. Normally the difference between beginner and expert is way higher than the difference between expert and superhuman. But superhuman on this is no joke. I normally play a couple missions, wipe to a single dog sprinting in from the fog of war and killing the whole squad in one turn, and then switch back down. Man, choosing where to put your first base is always a big one. If you're being completely serious, you probably want somewhere in North America or mainland Europe to cover either a lot of smaller nations or one big one. And you want as much of the area around the base to be land as possible. In this mod specifically, the yellowy bits will be horrible hot desert, the lumpy green bits are terrible hot jungle, and the white parts are just awful cold tundra. Avoid those. If you're being completely unserious, you want to be in Australia or Antarctica. Dealer's choice. I flirted with the idea of a Cuba-based pirating empire for a while, but eventually decided there just wasn't enough land there for robbable craft to land in. We're only playing with the second smallest circle right now, if you're wondering, and it's going to be a while before we get better radar. The Faroe Islands are also always on my shortlist. Way back when the internet was young and something awful was relevant, Lotax lording over his kingdom on a throne made of $10 bills, someone was doing a screenshot let's play of one of those world diplomacy Model UN type games, and a Faroe Island based goon was shocked and elated to realise his country actually existed in it, for the first time he'd experienced. Immediately following this, every other poster in the thread demanded that the United States of America immediately declare war and dispatch troops to the Faroe Islands. Ever since, they've always been on my mind. They don't exist in the base XCOM game that you might have gotten on floppy disk in a sepia-tinted flashback, but additions during OpenXcom added a tiny triangle of land to the area. We didn't build there, so that was a lot of words about nothing. I played an earlier test game calling myself the Sicilian Defense Squad in a very silly chess notation-based joke. I later realised that sounded a little bit neo-fascist and also wasn't funny. I like the idea of SiciliCom, but this time I was going to take a much more relaxed, fun approach and call the starting base E4KE2. Those who know. But sometimes, man, the random generator just hits. You just can't argue with that. The story so far picks up from the bad ending of XCOM. The war is lost, the aliens take over, and humanity is subjugated and experimented upon by their new rulers, the Star Gods. Our pirates used to be property of a bad scientist, but they broke out. A dream guided them to the base of Mount Etna, where one of the science I wrote the word Gugars. A dream guided them to the base of Mount Etna, where one of the science Gugars they'd stolen unlocked a hidden door leading them into a disused and half-destroyed base. Motherfucking volcano lair. Hell yeah. If you were wondering what the inside of Sexy Tomb looks like, it's unsexy. We've got facilities to house staff and store stuff, 2 hangars, one with a flying bus and one with a nothing, a basic radar, and an old Earth lab. A lot of this stuff we absolutely cannot rebuild right now should anything horrible happen, so keep that in mind. The grey tiles are solid rock. We can't build on them until we clear them out first, and that'll be $100,000 worth of effort. Our squad for the foreseeable future are these 6 randomly generated lab escapees. We can't currently recruit anyone else, so it's going to be a big problem if something bad happens to them. The first thing I look at on the stats screen is strength. Strength is how much you can carry and how far you can throw stuff. It's handy. Next you want to pay attention to firing and melee, your basic fighting skills. Stamina's important too, but unless it's really low, they'll probably be fine. Bravery matters more in this mod than in usual XCOM, and units who don't have much of it can be a tad ornery. The other numbers are nice to have, but not worth worrying too hard about. We rolled a lot of good strength this run. Outlaw Cass has over 50, and Big Convict isn't far behind. Fallen Cora's a crack shot with good reactions, and both Sergeant Brigand and Bermudan, Hoodlum are kinda cracked at melee. Sweaty Panther's the only one I'm less than enthused by right now. 101 melee skill is ridiculous, but without any strength to back it up, damage will be limited. I changed her equipped armor from Castaway to Topless, because of course that's an option, and because 16 strength is low enough that they can probably only carry a gun or a shirt. We're gonna quickly peek the Bootypedia now. I'm gonna wash my dang mouth out with soap after this. I won't be reading everything out to you because there are an unhinged amount of things, but we will quickly note that our 6 combatants are affectionately known within the game systems as escaped lunatics. Castaway is the default armor set for escaped lunatics. Our ladies have a total of 6 boots between them, but an abundant supply of double-sided tape. Additionally, the Castaway default skin has an excellent Freddie Mercury moustache. The ladies are mutants, larger, stronger, and tougher than humans, and as such have a base 20 armor on every side, even when wearing basically, or in one case literally, nothing. Scrolling down, we have a bunch of elemental resistances, nothing too surprising. I don't know what charm is, but it's probably gross. Wearing basically anything at all makes you flammable. I believe that's been sharply toned down from previous builds. Choking damage is always set to 400% to stop you dropping a smoke grenade and never leaving the cloud for the whole game, as you might in base XCOM. Though other measures are in place too to prevent passivity. EMP doesn't work too well on people, neither does the power of the warp. Heat and cold are environmental resistances that apply when fighting in hot or cold climates. Generally, they're inversely proportional, i.e., wearing a hat and scarf will make you warmer in the cold, and also warmer in the warm. A few extra stats were crammed in with the body text down there, letting you know we're in some seriously nerdy territory here. This is a lot of numbers for the default armor set. Combat stress is a new thing just for this mod, and it dictates how long a gal can go without murdering anyone before they start to freak out. This armor gives us a slight boost to energy recovery, which is always handy, and 6 inventory pockets other than our hands. Evasion is a flat reduction in enemy melee accuracy depending on your stats, and this armor has the default values for that. Wearing an animal skin bikini makes you have better night vision for some reason, and confers a slight bonus to evasion, reactions, and voodoo power, as well as a pretty nice buff to maximum stamina. It says you get 8 inventory slots, but I think it has less than the Castaway actually. I'm slightly confused. Combat stress is higher, however, if you're running around in your underpants. The same armor set can be worn as furs instead, and you'll automatically switch if you land somewhere too cold for streaking. The furs are a bit rubbish, although they do give you a minor resistance to the common stabbing element. It's harder to shoot in those gloves, and you lose 3 weight from that big coat before you've even equipped anything. It's not even that resistant to cold. Maybe it would help if they also wore trousers. You can also wear a bad dress with holes in it, if you want. The stats aren't good, the resistance is aren't good, and it's not overburdened with pockets, but it'll give you a free red credit chip if you deploy with any inventory slots open. I didn't know being topless gave you a bonus to night vision in this. Do they see through their boobs? This outfit provides me another opportunity to get a YouTube strike, and also a better stat boost than tribal pretty much across the board. I thought it'd give you more carry weight to play with, not having to deal with that heavy shirt, but apparently that was an older build? These lovely horrible rags don't seem to cover a whole lot, but still give you some environmental protection buffs for some reason. You only take 300% choking damage now rather than 400. I think the stats used to be way worse on this when I last played. The rags on their own take up 4 units of weight, but give you a 20% stabbing resist, some big evasion, a combat stress reduction, pain resistance, I believe that means stat penalties from injuries are lower, and a little bit of camouflage, reducing the range enemies can spot you from. I'd probably equip these more if the same stats were on something that's more conventionally clothing. As it is, I'll probably never use it, but it's purely because of the associated shame. And of course, the ultimate armor. Nothing at all. The huge buffs to stamina and reactions would be great, but not having any inventory slots aside from your hands is prohibitively annoying. Also, I'm not some kind of monster who's going to send the squad into battle nude. The combat stress also starts to get comically high here. Expect a nudie lady to go mental after any turn they haven't murdered someone. Before we start the game proper, first we should check in with the brainers. As well as our 6 fighting ladies, or hands, we've got 3 brainers hanging out in the lab. Scientists, in base XCOM terms. These units cannot and will not enter combat, and you wouldn't want them to anyway because they're too expensive. Their job is to stay home all day and think about things. Mood. Unlike base game XCOM, where there's a correct answer to, what do you want to research at the start? And that answer is, laser weapons please. I don't think there are any misses here, just a bunch of stuff that needs doing. The extremely early game research projects are only going to take us a couple of days, so I set 1 thinker on the first 3 options on the list and don't sweat too much. Right now we only have the 4 options, but there is going to be a scroll bar on this menu before you goddamn know it. Oh. Yeah, so there's events like this now. This one's... Oh, dang. You never know when the Soviet Army's going to show up. Yeah, you're probably going to recognize some of the music and arts from other properties. Anyway, the game has events now. They can be random or have specific triggers. This one was caused by us plopping our starting base down in Europe. The crux of the event is that we're down 50 points and up 3 cool rocks. Fair trade. The rocks came pre-researched too. That's why the Bootypedia opened, and I had to break out the censorship bar again. We're going to be seeing a lot of unregistered Hypercam too before the end of this. Please ignore this footage of me trying and failing to intercept a slow-moving civilian vehicle in the background. Ooh, Save a Sister could be a great first mission. It's a Red Lantern Villa, a small, enemy-dense urban map filled with low-level street thugs. Potentially a touch dangerous for us right now, but a win here would set us up with enough pistols and associated ammo that we wouldn't need to use black powder weapons for a while. Scratch that actually. Turns out you can't bus all the way to Australia from Sicily. Our brainers are on the case though, and have made the much less ambitious trip to nearby town. That'll let us buy a huge amount of absolute garbage and unlock further research opportunities. You know, I'm a little sorry about that villa. Winning one of those nets you a castaway gal, a fellow mutant you can recruit once back at base. And remember, we've got no other way to recruit right now. That would have been a major boon, as Andy might say. Oh well, let's find someone to take our anger out on. Here's a contestant right now. XCOM can look like a lot of nothing to the uninitiated. We're currently watching a slow-moving vehicle limping around over the English Channel. Right now we have no craft weapons and no craft weapon mounts to put them in, so our piratical opportunities are mostly limited to seeing if people look lost and hoping they land to ask for directions. If we get a little closer we can see what make of funny flying car we're dealing with, and that right there is an Academy Airbus. I know, because it's what we're flying too. These jokers are out looking for us. It takes 9 hours for these guys to pull over for the night. The girls have had 9 hours to work themselves into a frenzy. This too is an intimidating screen. Now I know what I'm doing, but it takes me a long time to outfit a squad for combat anyway, so let me take this opportunity to fill you in on where we're at right now. Sergeant Brigand takes a pistol from the armory, stuffs it into a belt, and opts for a baseball bat as her primary weapon. Outlaw Kess goes for the other pistol and a short blade. Seeing there are no more pistols, Big Convict hefts the harquebus, a big weirdo gun with a bayonet that's awful at being a gun, but dang handy as a spear. Then she takes a bottle of moonshine and is good to go. Fallen Cora has an actual shooting stat, so, despite initially being enamored by the other baseball bat, opts for a musket instead, being the rare pirate that has a hope of ever actually hitting something with it. Hoodlum yonks the bat as soon as Cora puts it down, and Sweaty Panther gets last pick and takes the last cutlass, with easily enough weight allowance left over for a t-shirt. Sweaty Panther is a disaster. I won't be going over all this in the future, I just want to help you get into the heads of these dangerous, dangerous ladies. Any free slots went on Molotov cocktails and black powder bombs, and all of the ladies are carrying 2 bandages just in case. LZ is hot. That's an academy nurse right there. Untrained combatants with thoroughly mediocre stats, normally armed with stun weapons. Getting hit on the head with a stun rod is probably going to knock out whichever gal's unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end in one, but it's not going to kill you. Sometimes they rock up with 22 rifles or tiny laser pistols, but neither are enough to be a big threat. Mutants are tough. There's a second one right in front of the airbus's door, and Cora has the cleanest shot she's ever going to get. She takes it and... what do you know? The prophecy came true. Sad to see if it was a hit or not in the 2 AM darkness through the black powder smoke, but that scream doesn't lie. From there, I have everyone else crouch and end their turn. Call me a coward, but XCOM turn 1's ahead. All the enemies are waiting for you with full-time units. Getting bold about it means you stand to eat a whole bunch of reaction fire. I've said these nurses aren't too dangerous, but we have absolutely no reserve right now. If someone takes an unlucky hit and has to set out a mission, we field 5 gals that mission. Hearing the shot and the scream, the nurse from the front of the Airbus comes charging for the door, running right into Big Convict, who promptly misses a 103% accurate melee attack. We'll talk about that later. I thought better of it anyway, and the sergeant runs over to take him out in a less permanent manner. We hit, but I don't know if I'd call that less than lethal. The little ghost here means they have so much more stun damage than remaining health that they are actually dying. Turns out being hit on the head with a baseball bat can kill a guy. Who knew? The one on the hill has a rifle. The gun sucks, their aim's bad, and they can't see in the dark as well as we can, but I'm still a little cautious around getting shot. Kess throws a Molotov, but misses him on the reverse slope. There's a little positional shuffling, and I hand the controller back to the computer. Opening the door again on turn 3, and there are no less than 4 nurses crowded right outside. Where do they even come from? Hoodlum calls back to the squad before engaging the first one she comes into contact with. Her first swing's a glancing hit, mostly cut off by the camera deciding to be weird, but the second puts him down. Sweaty Panther, desperate to prove herself, barrels out of the craft next and shanks another, who goes down messily with the blade still in him. While the melee was going on, Cora's been darting around the front of the craft, and as soon as she has a target, she takes the shot. There's no scream this time, but she could swear her aim was spot on. Big Convict's right behind her, and the follow-up shot from the harquebus is... shockingly, an actual hit. You won't see this often, folks. In the dark and the chaos, the one nurse still standing has maybe a split second to wonder what's happening to all her colleagues before one solid strike hits her in the back of the skull. Hoodlum wheels around and gets a second knockout of the turn. That was a busy one. I'm not sure how many enemies there are on these missions, so I don't know what we've got left. It's a small map though, and there aren't too many places to hide. Sweaty's charge continues all the way to their craft, which is uninhabited. It takes me 2 turns to spot the one last nurse, down in the valley on the lower left side. She strays a little too close to the dying fire and is illuminated for all of a second. It's all Cora needs to make the spot, and then Hoodlum's on him. Folks say around a D&D combat is 6 seconds long. In real time, for the funny little characters. In actual time, they take about a month. XCOM turns take a lot less time to play and a lot more happens in each of them, making the time frame a little harder to pin down. Even with that in mind, I'd say the 5 rounds of combat probably lasted somewhere on the further end of 30 seconds and a minute. 2 of the Academy nurses are dead on the ground. The first one that got shot and the one sweaty stabbed. Good job, by the way, Miss Panther. The other 5 managed to refrain from dying for long enough to be taken into custody. This is a good thing. They're worth more to us alive. Immediately following the battle, we get a mysterious package of holy arms and armor for being in the country of Romanica. The armor we can't use because it's human-sized, but there's nothing wrong with the swords they sent. You ever hear about Castlevania? Romanica is a country of warring feudal lords, fighting with everything from swords and shields to guns and bombs. Apparently, in the Great War that ended human rule of planet Earth, this is where the first bombs fell. Ground Zero roughly corresponding to the place we today know as Rome. Poor Rome. As well as the crud we just got from an insane Romanican nobleman, we can stick the stun rods and varmint rifles we looted from the dead nurses into the general armory. Unlike base XCOM, a lot of the weapons here are just guns intended for humans to use, or like whacking sticks and stuff. We can use those without researching them, although if we want the exact statistics, we're going to have to hand one over to the brainers. Speaking of the brainers, they were at home, thinking really hard about being pirates the whole time. In this mod, rather than being funded by a council of nations to defeat the alien threat, we're funded by local governments to rob and murder anyone but them. Another of the brainers popped around a few of the local villages and found some potential recruits. Human peasants aren't ever going to be as tough as our gals, but they are very affordable, and fill a slot on the Airbus slightly better than a wounded hand who can't come on missions, or a corpse. We pick up a few and some other miscellaneous items before continuing. The slightly bloody note we picked off one of the Academy goons has been deciphered. They were, in fact, looking for us. Not a lot of other useful information here though. A bunch of references to people we haven't met yet, and a vague threat about ninjas. At least we know why their gear sucks as much as ours does. You might have noticed we're not overburdened with good equipment right now. We're working with unrifled flintlocks, useless at any kind of range and slow to reload, although the damage is nothing to disrespect. Historically, flintlock weapons fired ammo of a vastly higher caliber than modern weapons. If it's going to take you 20 seconds to reload, you really want to make sure whoever you were shooting at doesn't get to shoot back. And since weapons were bigger, heavier, and loaded with much less powerful black powder primer, the resultant recoil force was less of an issue. A 50 caliber musket ball was a fairly typical pistol round, although the barrel bends on the musket here look distinctly French, meaning that would probably be a 69 caliber. Nice. And since we're using the same ammo for everything, I guess it's that. How you fit 3 of them in a single-barreled musket at one time is beyond me, but they'd be even more annoying to use if you couldn't. The guns are secondary though, and honestly you could have left them all on the craft some missions and not be wanting. The Molotovs and black powder bombs are good stuff. I get a bit precious with the bombs sometimes though. The damage is really high for where we're at, and the radius means even if the throw isn't spot on, they'll probably still die, but they don't throw particularly far. The Molotovs are a lot more disposable and versatile as tools. Chucking a Molotov at a wheat field to make a big, bright fire on a night mission can be a solid play, and throwing one at a person will light them on fire, dealing a ton of damage and tanking their morale. Just make sure you throw them at something actually flammable. Once we've closed the distance, guns and throwables are out of the window. Swords, daggers, and trusty baseball bats are the only thing we've got worth relying on in a scrap. There's actually a crazy amount of melee weapons with very tiny stat differences and little niches to fill, but when it comes down to it, you equip whatever you think's going to be useful in a pinch, and when you're staring down the enemy, you use whatever's in your hands. Actually, even if we've neglected to bring a weapon at all, the gals are capable of delivering a vicious flurry of punches, powerful enough to knock out an unarmored human. That last research bestowed on us the ability to distill Hillyrium, a useful thing to have your runts do to generate money, and a needed reminder, for me, that they exist at all. Runts, formerly engineers, are the third type of base staff. Like brainers, you'll never catch them entering into a firefight, but they'll stay home and make stuff for you. Detrika, Nicole, Stephanie and Jacqueline are the 4 peasants we hired. Their stats are vastly inferior to those of a proper hand across the board, notably suffering a whole lot in strength. 18 strength is a good breakpoint for a good peasant. That'll enable him to use an important early game weapon that isn't too reliant on silly things like shooting skill. I gave Stephanie a set of stupid hunter bikini armor and told Nicole to go cover herself in mud because she is awful. Sweaty Panther gets the other hunter bikini, shockingly enabling her to put on more clothes. And Big Convict and Outlaw Kess get cool leather jackets. Those offer a little more protection than just their mutant skin and have a decent amount of pockets. A little more time and a little more air traffic go by, and we encounter another Academy Airbus. This one got real close to the hideout for a second there. We are not cool with that. I was actually a little worried they were going to come in. We'll probably get to that later. Definitely could have seen us there if they'd looked out the window. I suppose whether they found us or not doesn't really matter. They landed shortly after. We won't leave any alive to tell tales. By default, the game will remember your previous loadouts and try and replicate them, provided enough of the junk you were holding is still in your armoury. I turned that function off, on purpose, as some kind of cruel joke on myself. Feeling pretty good after that last skirmish though, I went through this one pretty quick. I want to try out one of each weapon we were sent by the nobles. A quarterstaff for Sergeant and a sword for Convict. Kess takes the old shotgun we've had this whole time but not thought about until now. The rest is standard. You might notice a couple of bigger cannon-type guns in the loadout menu. I'd tell you I was saving those for a rainy day, but that would only engender disappointment. Truth is, they're heavy, inaccurate, and impractical weapons that I don't really know what to do with. It's hardly unbelievable that they'd be able to see and hear us swooping into land, but it is a little concerning that wherever we go, we seem to always park right in front of some dude just staring right into the cockpit. Map looks farmy. High farm likelihood. Actually, I think we can confirm those farm suspicions. We've got eyes on a tractor. Someone's about to learn an important lesson about staring. I can be a little timid in XCOM missions, especially on the first few turns, when I have very little idea of what's going on outside the craft. My fallback strat seems to be to peek out the door, take some kind of shot, and then dash back in. The doors close at the end of every half turn, so one of their guys would have to open them again to expose my lurky ladies to fire. It's good stuff. The Airbus isn't exactly a fortress though. Bullets can come through the front cockpit and the side windows. You kinda start to get a hang of the angles people might be able to shoot you from, but you'll always be surprised by the occasional bolt from the blue. There's a bullet out there for everyone. Turn 2 comes about, and we can see that our Molotov has had a substantial effect on the target. As the burning nurse flees, they're burning bright enough that they illuminate another 2. Easy prey for Cora and her musket. Okay, if anyone asks, that's the one she was aiming for. Nobody else has much of a ranged option, so the girls huddle behind the bus and wait for him to come closer. Brigand and Kess make a flanking effort round the back of the large brick building and run right into trouble. I've acted a little rashly here, and Sergeant can't really get anywhere safe, so Kess moves up to cover her with the shotgun. It's an old, rusted-out piece of junk loaded with birdshot, but it's close range, and they are only human. On the enemy phase, 2 very interesting things happen. Firstly, the nurse charges right in on Brigand, fires their rifle, and hits the floor at their own feet. In base game XCOM, that shot would have hit us, hands down, no matter what the projected accuracy claimed. The percentages being more of an abstract representation of intangible accuracy, rather than an actual die roll. Melees, however, are chaotic scrambles, and in this mod, any hostiles adjacent to the shooter will be able to interfere with the shot. I think you pay a little energy and it's all chance-based, pistols being less affected and small pistols being even less affected, but a successful skill check of some description means the shot doesn't go where they aimed it. This can happen to you also, and you can deflect the shot into an ally if you're really unlucky, but it's a much safer bet than just letting them do it. Secondly, Kez raises a shotgun and blows the charging nurse away. Remember, this is still the enemy's turn. A key feature of XCOM as a system is that characters can act in the opponent's round, provided they had time units left over, and pass some kind of under-the-hood reaction skill check. All of this happens in an eye blink. The nurse charges onto the stairs looking for trouble. Brigand grabs the barrel of the gun and forces it groundwards. The human has maybe an instant to consider the poor life choices that led her to that moment, about to be beaten to a pulp by a huge, half-mad mutant, and then the shot comes out of the darkness from the second one they hadn't even seen coming. Another one of them's had a quick peek around the side of the airbus, curiosity which is immediately punished when our turn rolls around. Hoodlum's back at it with the bat. I don't know why roosters are crowing in the middle of the night. It's very noisy here. Assuming the building will be clear, I tell the sergeant to head inside. It is not clear. There's a nurse with a stun rod blocking the hall. Sergeant takes a quick 110% accurate swing with a quarterstaff and misses, before stepping back out of rod range for a lunge. This one connects and the target crumples, but a second identical stun rod lady is spotted in the first room on the left. They must be twins. It does not go well for the twin. Also, it was on the left of where we came from, okay? Not the left of the screen. I know which way left is, I'm not Nem. I'm role-playing here. If you were typing that out just now, you should be ashamed. With the initial contact over, we're kind of in the wiping out stragglers period now. A baddie in the middle field is shocked when a lady in her underpants leaps out of the darkness and is then literally shocked when she bops him with some kind of cattle prod. Another bat lady lurks by the craft, but by the time we've spotted him, nobody quite has enough points left to do anything about it, so we creep a little closer and call the turn. The last nurse takes a step too many towards us and Kez panics, throwing the shotgun again and scoring a third kill of the mission. I'd meant to take the last one alive, but apparently Kez had other plans. Just the 3 prisoners this time, we got a little trigger happy. Their fault for going in our yard. Not really any loot we didn't see before, but more of anything's handy. At the very least, we can sell it. Gals can acquire titles in this mod, allowing them to gain stat boosts from using various weapons and performing various feats in the heat of combat. There's a few negative ones in there too, but the general trend is steady upwards progress. We'll love to see number go up here. It's been a solid half hour, and that's gonna do us for this one, I reckon. I got a little more of this campaign recorded and ready to go, but I'm also me and my attention is, flighty. So I might just start 10 more series instead of ever continuing this one. Holler if you liked it. That might influence my decision somehow, but honestly, I don't know for sure if that's how it works, so don't stress out about it. If you want to rename one of the gals, give me a suggestion in the comments. It's not going to happen for a little while though, as I've got another 2 hours of gameplay recorded, and keep in mind that the one you wanted might be dead by then. Such is life. Thanks for watching, and have a great day, folks.